We'll start off in the S&P 500 daily cloud chart and then move on to the Qtec and NDXT. S&P 500 dailies in trouble. The combo and sequential by setup 1 count printed. But to negate that for end of day today, there must be a close above 43.65.98 for the price flip to the sell setup count 1. But that really took the wind out of the sails of the little bullish trend we had going on here. If it stays in the cloud for the next couple of days, and after the CPI report can bust out to the upside, then we'll start over. But if this breaks down under the cloud, it's a given that we're headed down further. The sequential cluster by countdown 11 printed, and that's big trouble too. We haven't had a countdown for sequential clusters since the great financial crisis, and that's well on its way to print a 13 now. On the bright side, a close above this close from the 9th will qualify the relative retracement up 1. Then we could get the confirmation bar after that, and then I would say we could get up off the floor and move on. Break down out of the cloud. There's the new trend factor disqualified down 142.67.38, and then disqualified 2 41.47.05, 3 40.30.11. As far as the sell TDST is concerned, by losing the sell setup count 8 and negating that sequence for the sell count, it didn't do much for the floor down here, because even if the 9 printed, it would have just moved down to this low here, 4132.94. So it's even higher than it would have been if it did print the 9 end count for a sell setup. Bottom of the cloud and current price for today is 43.2660, and the top is at 44.11.76 still. And the daily Qtec cloud chart. Qtec is the ETF to the NDXT equal weighted technology index, which is the sister of XLK cap weighted. And we're looking back to the start of D-wave at the A. I'll zoom into the current area and turn lines on. And there was quite the downdraft yesterday. It nailed the buy TDST, meaning price, absolutely nailed it here. TDST 150.74 and a high of 150.58, so 20 cents or so. That's just about nailing it. And then it had the downdraft just like the S&P 500. It is back in the cloud and was able to hold on to its sell setup count 8. So if there's a close below 145.50 for the Qtec for today on the 10th, then we lose this sell setup sequence, and that would be even worse than the S&P 500's loss of its sell setup count. Somehow close above this close 145.50, and the sell setup 9 end count will print, and that will be a good thing, especially if it could stay in the cloud somehow. And the bottom of the cloud here is at 146.47, top of the cloud 148.37, and its 100-day simple moving average 147.30, so it pretty much nailed that to the downside here. Right under the 100 is the 50 simple moving average 146.58, so pretty good support to the downside. for the Qtec equal weighted technology ETF. Break down through the cloud and all that, and the baseline 144.82. The conversion line is still creeping up to get above the baseline possibly, and the channel 3 lows at 142.61. Lower Stark band brings up the rear 140.79. Head up today, and a close above this ongoing supply line will qualify it for today, and it's right at 149, give or take a few pennies. Keep going, and then that one gets qualified. That's around, as you can see, 151 or 151 and some change. And this is the same as the S&P 500. Here's the relative retracement up to, and a close above that would mean that it probably closed above the buy TDST, so that would have to be a really strong move. But if it does, that relative retracement level will become qualified today, end of day with a close above it. And this is the 8th bar since the ATM exhaustion alert up printed, so that's exhausted for any more upside, about 8 bars. And a little bit of rollover action down here at the ATM. Fast trigger up turned red. Doesn't mean it's going to dive down. Could go sideways for a little while, but once it turns red, there's a good indication of at least a little downside indicated back here. There's another instance, and here's a big one where it really took a dive down here after it turned red. Slow trigger up, did not make it above the overbought line, so let's see what happens there. Momentum could carry it above it, even though we get some downside action. And REI crossed under the overbought line, and there's some downside price action, so we'll have to see if this can pull back on the stick at 0 and stay at 0 neutral here. That will happen in a couple of days. CPI report's going to be awfully important. The DM1 did cross above its overbought line, and ROC is reflecting price action as it's rolling over a little bit, but still above its overbought line slightly. Actually 10 cents under it, so it did cross under the overbought line slightly, and that momentum usually carries down. So this is the absolutely critical level here. This close 145.50. Price must stay above it for end of day today's close.